Episode of As the Leader Grows. I am your host, Ken Jocelyn. I don't even know how to explain this story. Um, I was watching an Instagram reel last week with this guy and his wife, and it was one of those where I was so like, holy cow, this is so good. And it was, and I'll let you tell the story here in just a minute, but it was one of those that moved me so much. I shared it, and then I get an email from his team that goes, "Hey, Jake Hamilton saw that you did this. He would love to be on your podcast." And I'm like, can't be the Jake Hamilton I know of. Like, because I haven't heard this guy's name in forever. So I look him up and I'm like, holy cow, this is Jake Hamilton from Bethel, used to lead worship. Heck, we did his songs in our church. So we hop on our Zoom call today, and I'm staring at Jake Hamilton. Jake, dude, what's up, bro?
Hey, how are you doing, man? Thanks so much for having me on. Seriously, I love the wild story of how things end up happening when you just follow the thread.
Oh, crazy, dude. It's absolutely insane. Talk about, so the video that I posted the other day, I shared it
Yep.
on my Instagram, was I guess you and your wife are doing a little podcast or some teaching and some stuff like that.
Honestly, what we've been doing is we kind of just started getting together. We hired a company to help us sort of flush out the content for all the men's stuff we're doing. We've done a lot of stuff for men and marriage for the last,
Mhm.
I think, decade. The short version of that is our marriage kind of fell apart in 2010 when I played like the largest event I had ever played in Chicago with Jesus Culture. Played that, and
Mhm.
my marriage fell apart. There was no addiction, no alcohol, no drugs, no pornography, no adultery, just a workaholic who was in church.
Mhm.
And if you're a workaholic in church, you get applauded. So that's really great. And so I was getting applauded a ton for working really
Yeah.
hard. And my marriage fell apart. And in the restructuring of that, of the refiguring out how to prefer my family, we ended up recognizing how many other families were in the same position we were, where they
Yeah.
wanted to do it well, but they just didn't have the tools. So we started working with couples, and along the way, someone told us, hey, if you really want to save marriages, you better go get men. And if you can get a man, you can get a home, and you can get a marriage, and you can get a family. And I was like, that sounds lame, but sweet. You know what I mean? Like, it's a great idea, but most men's stuff, I was like, not really
It's
for
cheesy.
me.
Yeah, it wasn't, it
Yeah.
wasn't, it
And
wasn't
so,
good.
long story short, we started running with this thing called The Fight that we're building out. And that led to us sitting together and just me and my wife having conversations. There's no podcast, it's not connected to anything. It
Yeah.
literally is two cameras in a room and me and my wife talking about the stuff that's impacted us.
Well,
And one
that
of the
story,
things,
she asked you that
yeah,
question. She said,
that's it.
what would you do for me?
What she said specifically, what is the pain that you would
Yeah.
take away from me?
Yeah.
But because the reason I connected to that story is because in 2010 till now, I have explored my wife's story enough to
Mm.
know her deepest pains and know what she needs care for. And that deep pain that I would take away from her is the fact that no matter how much I pursue her, because she did not have a father in the home, she ultimately is always going to feel
Yeah.
some degree of lack of safety and going to feel alone. And no matter how hard I try or how good of a husband I am, that wounding I didn't give her, so I can't
Yeah.
take it away.
Dude, I love that. And so let me rewind just a little bit, Jake. So you guys are doing your biggest show you've ever
Yeah.
done. Dude, you're serving God, you're doing the deal. Because we talked a lot off air, like literally like
Yeah.
for probably 10 or 15 minutes. And I was like, holy cow, we haven't done a good job in the church at reaching men at a level that connects with especially high performing men who have an entrepreneurial spirit, which you do.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
you're with the guys, you're doing this thing with Jesus Culture, and you walk off stage. To walk me through, what was the conversation? Like, did your wife just say, "Hey, I ain't doing this anymore"?
The short version is I had been traveling a ton. So, which again, in our world was like, dude,
Right.
you're killing it. You're
Yeah.
traveling the world. You're putting on 100,000, 200,000 miles a year on flights. You are serving the Lord. You are amazing. And, and the next morning, like, so I was gone 2 weeks leading up to this event. And I'll tell you what, man, when I was 18 years old, I know I heard the audible voice of God tell me that I'm going to write the songs the whole world would sing. I know that
Yeah.
I heard that. And
Yeah.
now I'm standing in front of almost 20,000 people and I'm like, oh, this is that. And
Mhm.
then the next morning, my wife, because we hadn't spent much time together in 2 weeks because I was traveling, sits with a dad, and the dad goes, "How are you doing?" Addressing my wife. "How are you actually doing?" But she didn't have a dad. And I watched my wife, who does not cry, who's very strong, just crumble and weep. And we sat with a leader for like, I think it was about 4 hours, 4 or 5 hours. And she just ripped into me for about 5 hours.
Dude,
Of,
when you saw your wife cry after he asked her that question, tell me where was your heart? How'd your heart feel?
we talk about this story a ton. And what's insane about it is I knew it wasn't working, but I
Yeah.
didn't not love my wife.
Right.
I wasn't trying to make her feel and this is the position most men are in. And
Yeah.
women need to understand this, because most men are not trying to do a crappy job of loving their wives. They're genuinely trying, as dysfunctional or as immature as it might be. I'm like, I'm serving God. I'm not like there's no hidden sin or junk behind me that I'm carrying. Like, I'm trying to do this well, and it's still not connecting.
Mhm.
And what it
Mhm.
made me feel is deeply, deeply sad for the
Mm.
fact that we got here and I had no tools to lead us any further than where we were in that room right there. That is the beginning, middle, and end of my leadership capability in my house, was right there. And I had two options. I could either be like, screw you, you must be crazy because I'm serving the Lord and
Right.
everybody out there thinks I'm awesome.
I'm Jake Hamilton, right? I
I'm,
know, right? Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
I am royalty. I have destiny. I have been said,
Mhm.
I sing
Come
the
on.
song,
Yeah.
and it's like I could throw down,
Yeah.
or I could get low. And I'll never forget sliding off. We were sitting on the couch, guys talking to us, and he told me, he just looked straight at me and goes, "You are a selfish
Mhm.
butthole," but more
Mhm.
directive than that.
Mhm.
And he just straight told me. And I slid onto the ground and sat below my wife and sat below them. And she just, for
Mm.
hours. And I was like, I have to take this hit. If I'm going to grow, if I'm going to learn, I have to take this hit. And I meet tons of guys who they'll spend 4 hours a day in the gym and talk about health, but can't do 40 minutes with their wife and have a deep
Mm.
conversation.
Mm.
So where's your strength really at? And that was what I was learning in that moment. Was I was learning my weaknesses in order to recognize where I could grow as a man, as a husband, as a father, and as a leader. And I had to submit
Mm.
to that, even though most of it, by the way, now when we talk about it, it's not like she's like, yes, and all of that I said that day was absolutely correct.
Right. Right.
Really,
Yeah.
most of it, she said, was her putting the face of every man that had hurt her,
Yeah.
every man that had wronged her. I had to take that hit. And that was my privilege and my honor to do so.
When she was doing that, Jake, how much empathy? What was your heart? What was the position of your heart during that time?
Context is simply this. I had and I still to this day carry a very strong message in my heart for the value of pain and suffering, and the reality that death is not an enemy, it is an ally. If death
Mm.
was conquered, then it is not an enemy anymore. It is an ally leading me to greater levels of growth. And when my bank account is dying, it's because there's about to be a rebirth. If my
Mm.
job is ending, it's because there's about to be a rebirth. If something is falling apart. So that is my mindset
Mhm.
in pretty much life. And we have a daughter,
Yeah.
just context too. Again, my daughter was born with cerebral palsy. She was diagnosed at 15 months. So she doesn't walk, she's cognitive and all those things. It's, and she's been like the greatest blessing in our whole life.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
all of that gave me context to go, when she's hitting me with this, I'm thinking about me because I am still insanely
Yeah.
selfish.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
going
Yeah.
like, because I'm a
Yeah.
man too. I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
how
I
do I
get it.
fix this? How do I figure this out? What do I do? What's happening here? How did I screw this up when I didn't even know I was screwing it up? But then as she just got angrier and angrier, I was like, this this isn't the woman I married. This is the little girl behind that woman that's never had someone sit at her feet and take a punch for her. And I'm like, oh, this is what I have to do. And I knew it in that moment. I was like, I can't go up to everybody and tell them sacrifice is valuable, pain is valuable, death is an ally. I can't say those things. And then the moment it shows up in the hardest places in my life, not take that hit. And that was what it was. I looked at it like I was in a sparring match, and I
Mm.
had to, if she's going to get stronger and I'm going to get stronger, I have to hear everything she's going to say. And
So
so,
how long out of that, Jake, did you guys go and realize, and you said it off air, and there's a lot of men that are in the same spot I'm in. There are a lot of guys that are struggling just like I'm struggling. Oh, I
oh,
lost you, bro.
sorry. No, sorry about that. I don't know what happened.
No. We froze. I'm not sure exactly what happened.
That's
How
weird.
long? We'll edit it and cut it. But
Yeah.
how long after you guys had that time together did you realize, man, I'm not the only man that's struggling like this?
Okay.
We're not the only marriage that's struggling like this.
So me and my wife are completely open books. Okay. So like if you
Yeah.
ask us about anything, we're pretty much going to tell you every detail of our lives because we're just completely open books. So for my job, for a living, I was traveling, doing music,
Mm-hmm.
preaching, all those things. So it took us about maybe 3 or 4 months. And that was just financial of like, I'm doing nothing and us reconnecting and me sleeping down on the couch and giving her tons of space for like the first, I'm going to say 2, 3, 4 weeks. Then there was a click where she realized, okay, he heard me.
Mm.
He heard me and he's not trying to fix this. He's trying because basically the Lord took me to, and this gets really preachy, but the bottom line is I end up in 1 Corinthians 13 and I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, and I read the whole thing and I get a sense that the Lord, I just felt like, again, super cheesy to me, but I'm like, I immediately,
Dude, I keep losing. I lost you again, my friend.
dang, I'm on my hard line. I don't know how that
No,
happened.
no, no,
I'm
no. Yeah, I just
sorry.
checked my. I no, I don't know that it's you. I don't know that it's not me. For some reason, my internet is, and it's. I have like gig.
Weird.
It's fast. So
Yeah.
anyway,
Anyways,
you're down on the couch. You're reading through First Corinthians 13.
bottom line is I'm looking through 1 Corinthians 13 and I recognize I'm none of these. I'm
Mm,
not patient. I'm not
mm,
kind. I'm like the opposite of all these as I'm driving
mm,
this train of my life forward. And I recognize that this is a pathway, and the first pathway is purpose. So or is patience. So I just literally set up, was like, okay, well, we're 8 years into our marriage at this point, almost 9 years in. So for the next 9 years, I'm going to offer my life as a sacrifice to my wife
mm.
in the same way that she's been
Yeah.
sacrificing because I didn't know how to love her. And if I get nothing out of this for 9 years, I'm talking no sex, no connection, no whatever. Can I make it 9 years to offer her that which
Mm,
she has offered me? I'm going to give that to her. And I'm
mm,
over the course of that going to become the man that I know I can be. And I'm
mm,
going to do the work, not for her, but for me to become who I was supposed to become. And if I become who I was meant to become, maybe she'll turn her heart towards me again. And so as we went back to work and I had a few things to go like play at that were just on the schedule and we had to make some money, um, we go and start telling in these green rooms, people are like, how are you guys doing? We're like, oh, dude, it's crazy. Everything sucks. Our marriage
mm.
fell apart. And here's
Hey,
the whole
did they
story.
not look at you and be like, "Now, hang on just a minute," because you know how it is, dude, in church.
Oh,
When they ask, they don't really want to know.
no, dude,
Yeah.
but here's the crazy part. They would, same thing every time. They would do this. This is how we knew it was a problem. Is everyone was like this, like, oh, yeah, dang, that's wild. Can't believe that's awkward. Can we talk to you guys afterwards?
Yeah.
Every time.
Yeah.
Every time they were like, can we meet with you afterwards?
Yeah.
Awkward, weird. Let's not talk about it. but everyone wanted to have a conversation.
Let me ask you,
Please.
why do you think the church as a whole stamps that and goes, man, you love Jesus more because you're sacrificing the things that when you went to 1 Corinthians 13, you're like, I'm not patient, I'm not kind, I'm not all the things. Why do you think there is this? Well, there's two things I think that we can talk about. Number one, that they look at that like, oh my God, man, you love God. Look at how much you're serving. Look how many miles you've flown. Look at the stages you're on. Look at the number of people you're in. And not only that, but you know how it is, bro. When you ask somebody, how are you doing? You
I don't
ain't
want the real
looking for,
answer.
I can do this. Sucks. This is terrible. I've been sleeping on the couch for 3 weeks. Like they're like, we don't know how to deal with that.
That's right. My short answer is when your definition of kingdom looks more like a business than it does a family, you can never live out the things that God actually desires for you to live out. That's it. 1 Corinthians does not work in the context of a business. It works in the context of a family, and then you can bring it into your business, but you cannot do it the opposite.
That's
You
good,
cannot
bro.
do it the opposite.
That's good. That's strong. That's strong.
And I'm watching a lot of leaders try to
Man.
learn in their business what they won't do at home. And that is when it starts to fall apart because they're trying to figure out how do I, dude, I want to run my business with integrity. I want to be like super connected. I want to make sure that the people that are working for me have purpose, that they feel cared for, that they feel looked after, that they feel seen, that they feel heard. And I would turn around almost every time right now. I go, does your wife have all of that yet? If she does not, then you will never be able to offer it to your business ever. It will always be a farce. It will always be a performance. It will always be fake, and it will never produce the fruit that you're actually looking to produce because you can only learn that in your home. I would tell guys in ministry all the time, it's like, dude, it's not impressive to buy a plane ticket. People think they're heroes because they bought a plane ticket for 3,000 miles around the world to minister to strangers. But those same dudes won't walk 30 feet across their own living room to minister to their own wife. So your life is complete and utter BS, and everyone knows it, but no one wants to say anything because we like the propaganda. The propaganda pays bills.
Yeah.
It just does. And that's what's so difficult. And we're watching it fall apart. We're watching the fallout of this, man, all over the church. And no wonder we have, and then we're going to go and tell people, about gay marriage and about LGBTQ, add 1,000 things. We're going to be a voice into that when we can't even hold our own marriages together.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that we shouldn't be a voice into that. What I'm saying is do it in your home first.
You know, Erwin got up at Create this year. He was mad at me because I asked him to do faith. He wanted to talk about business. No, he was Erwin, if you're listening to this, bro, I love you. He was not happy with me. He was like, I told you I didn't want to do faith. I'm like, yeah. I mean, bro, I'm like, he's been my favorite communicator for probably 20 years.
Yeah, he was a big part of when we had planted an emergent church. So when they first planted Mosaic, we were down there with a little team. So I'm
like, but so he did and fought me on it a little bit. But dude, he talked about how in the Western culture in the church, we've taken the word, the gospel, and we've made it synonymous with the word easy. Come to Jesus, everything will be good.
Right.
You come to Jesus, everything's going to be easy. You come to Jesus, it's going to be.
Oh yeah.
He's like, man, it could not be further from the truth.
Dude, tell me this. What do we call it when somebody comes up at the end of a service? We do a what? What's it called?
Altar call.
What do you do on an altar?
Sacrifice.
If you came to take something off the altar, you're in sin and would be stoned to death. That is where you go to die, not to receive.
Yeah.
And the language is all fractured because we don't value what I said earlier. We don't value pain. We don't value suffering. But if we're going to actually become the people we want to become, that we were meant to become, to have the marriages we were meant to have the businesses that are recession proof, that are government proof. Like, if we want businesses that sustain in and out of season, we have to find a new mode of operation that values pain, suffering, and sacrifice, and recognize it as an invitation and potential, not limitation.
Do you
If we
think
see it as invitation and not limitation, the moment pain and suffering, sacrifice shows up, we'll go, there's something new happening. I'm in.
do you think that Jake, one of the reasons we don't do that is because in the church we're afraid to tell people when something's going on like that, like in your marriage?
Oh, dude, I think it's not just we are so afraid of the house of mirrors we built.
Mm.
We're just terrified. We're living in anxiety. We're living in
Mm.
depression. We're living in fear.
Mm.
And all these leaders are running around afraid someone is going to look in their closet because they're addicted to Ambien. They can't sleep. Everyone's taking all these drugs every single day to sleep, to numb out, to cope. I'm like, guys, there is other options.
Yeah.
But it's a hard road. And again, dude, let me be super kind. Let me be very, very kind. I get it. Like, let's not do that. Like, I get it. Like, let me just tell you that Jesus is going to make it all better and you're going to be fine. That is it. Dude, that sells way more books. Let's just be real honest.
You're right. You're right.
5 Steps to a Better Life in Jesus is going to be way more of a bestseller than Come Take the Hardest Path of Your Entire Life to Sacrifice and Suffer in Ways You've Never Thought Imaginable to Become the Person You Want to Become. That's just,
it's crazy because I just had a buddy of mine on yesterday. He's one of the top home builders in Orange County.
Oh, come on.
2 years ago, tried to take his own life. And this is male suicide prevention month.
Yeah.
80% of all people that commit suicide are men.
Yes.
The number one cause of death in men under 50 is suicide.
Right.
And I'll be really honest with you. And again, I don't, obviously this is neither one of our hearts. This isn't a bash the church session.
Oh God, no, I wouldn't be here without it.
We don't do a good job at saying it's okay if you're not okay. Like, it's okay if you are struggling with depression or struggling with anxiety, because 80% of all suicides are men. 50% of 50% of men, or men under 50, the number one cause of death with men under 50 is suicide. I lost you again, my friend.
Wild. The number one cause, you keep going.
Yeah, no, I just said the number one cause of death under men under 50 is suicide. They take their own life. And it's what Keith talked about yesterday. He was like, I'm supposed to be in this position in my life.
Yes.
Dude, I'm making millions of dollars. I'm connected in church and I am miserable with really the feeling that there's no outlet for me to go, hey, pastor, I'm struggling.
There it is. Dude, I'm telling you, Ken, that is it. All the fight is trying to build. If I'm trying to build anything, all I'm trying to build is a place where men can belong before they believe and before they behave. Because the way that the church structure works, because we need people to help make the system work, right? Like, we just need it. And if we're not going to call it a business, then it just becomes a manipulative in some ways. But what we're trying to do is we need bodies, we need people, we need money to make the thing happen. Totally understand all of that. But in a lot of ways, we want people to behave so that then they can believe And then once they behave and believe, they're allowed to belong. Jesus did it the exact opposite. It's belong, then they start to believe, then they'll behave. All we're trying to do with the fight is give men a place to belong. We don't even talk about pornography. Why? It's irrelevant. Pornography is a fruit issue, not a root issue.
It's a symptom.
So I'm not trying to deal with your pornography issue, because why the hell would I do that when it's coming from a place of deep lack of purpose and knowing what your worth and value is? It has nothing to do. Most men, I get that there are some with addictive behaviors, all of those things, totally get that. But we're not building this on the they have nowhere where they actually will feel covered and like they actually belong. And that is what we're trying to build, I believe, is what my heart is in the midst of what we're going after, is giving a place where men can come in and go, here is all my crap. Which, by the way, we've done 12 weekends. We call them fight weekends. They're limited to like 12, 15 guys. And sometimes it is a fight because we use a lot of role playing. So it gets real physical. It's really built around that masculine energy. And we want it to feel that way. We want it to feel a little dangerous. We want it to feel a little bit like you don't know what you're walking into, but you can say whatever you want, and we are going to have your back. Just ride or die.
I love how Jordan Peterson talks about masculinity in the fact that real masculinity is a man who is dangerous, but chooses to restrain himself.
That's right.
It is a man who understands his power and ability, but when he needs to sit at the feet of his wife because he's been selfish, he's like, you know what? Hey, I've got to take this for her.
Yeah, there's a great book called King, Warrior, Magician, Lover. It's the 4 archetypes of This has to be on my end. I have to go figure this out. That is so wild. It might be just because it's like now 100 degrees in Reading now. And once it starts getting hot, everything just shuts down. But there's a book called King, Warrior, Magician, Lover that is exactly where I think Jordan even gets a lot of his language from, because there's the immature warrior is the hero, where he's out to do heroic exploits for himself. But a warrior is submitted to a cause higher than himself. And we need men who are tempered into warriors, not just trying to be heroes of their own story. Because heroes of your own story doesn't make good, wise elders long-term in life. And that's what we need. We need elders who are living not for themselves and showing us a path that's better than selfish ambition.
Well, the majority of guys that are living for themselves are doing it because they're still trying to figure out what their identity is. Who am I? What is this all about? Can I, I failed at this, or I didn't do this well, or somebody told me this. My mom or dad wasn't there, like you talked about in the video. Who am I? And so they're out constantly trying to prove. And
that's because men have not gone through initiation. We lost all rites of passage and all tribal initiation. It's gone in Western culture. And tribal initiation answers 3 questions. Who am I? Where is my tribe? And what do I do with my pain? That's it. That is what initiation provided. When a young boy went through a really hard thing, and there's, tons of them that we talk about and we explore a bunch of them, but when you don't have, who am I? Who is my tribe? Where is my tribe? And what do I do with my pain? I'm left to fumble through that into my 40s. And then by the time I hit 40s, I hit a crisis of limitation where now I don't have enough years left to accomplish all I thought I was going to accomplish, or enough money to accomplish all I thought I was going to accomplish. And now I either go into, well, I'm just going to keep trying to be a hero for the rest of my life, which is ugly and egocentric, or everything's crap and it sucks. So just forget everything and you become cynical. Or you choose to spend the second half of your life giving your life away so others accomplish all the things that you weren't able to get to. My life should be lived so that I'm a resource to others, and that becomes the centrality of my identity, not what I've accomplished or achieved or own.
I love it, dude. One of the things for me in my story, and I'm sure we'll get to talk about this later as well, is at 52 years old, coming off of a 27-year marriage that ended, a lot because of ministry. I mean, a lot because of ministry. I mean, I was in ministry for 15 years, full-time vocational ministry. Coming off that, the first time with a new therapist. I mean, you know, ministry, I mean, I'm in therapy all the time. Therapy is just part of what you do, right?
Yeah,
Christian counseling. Yeah. And so I'm sitting in this therapy session with Maxine. She's my therapist. And I tell people she's like a mild version of Medea. She's an older Black lady and she's hilarious. I walk in, she's like, "How are you and Jesus doing this week?" I'm like, "We're good." And so the first time I go in and I sit down with her, Jake, she goes, "Tell me your story." And I said, "I was born in Detroit, raised there till I was 8. Parents got divorced and I was in 2nd grade. Mom moved us from Pontiac to the Atlanta area. From the time I was in 6th grade to my senior year of high school, I moved back and forth to my dad 6 different times. I went to 12 schools and I went to 6 different high schools." And she's writing down, she goes, "Honey," she goes, "why did you move so many times?" I said, "I didn't have a choice." I said, anytime I got in trouble, my mom would say, "Go pack a bag." And I had 24 to 48 hours and I was on a bus, a plane, and my dad was on the way from Michigan to pick me up. And I'm telling you, dude, August the 22nd, 1993 is the day I gave my life to Christ. And this was the second biggest aha moment of my life. At 51, 52, she looked at me and she goes, "Ken, how do you think that's affected your relationship with the women in your life who are supposed to love and protect you?" And bro, I lost it. I lost it. A week and a half, 2 weeks earlier, I was in San Francisco. I dated a girl that I love very much for a year and a half from Santa Rosa. We didn't even make it across the bridge going north. We had an argument. I made her pull the car over. I got my suitcase out and I left. And here was a 50-year-old man, 52-year-old man living out the trauma of a 12-year-old boy for 40 years.
There you go.
And I had no idea. Bro, been in ministry. I've been doing it all. And here was a 50-plus-year-old man living out the trauma of a 12-year-old boy. My team is going to love me for having to chop this thing back together.
This is just, it's a test of will now.
I said, my team, you got off and I said, my team is going to love me because they're going to have to chop this whole thing up to make it.
I was like, poor guys. I'm like, oh my gosh. But you're living out of the trauma of a 12-year-old.
I had no idea. And so now when I do my conference, my therapist or one of my therapists or one of my therapist friends is always there. So 2 years ago, right behind John Maxwell, I get up and share my story. Just like this, 350, 400 faith-based entrepreneurs. And I'm sharing that story with my therapist sitting next to me.
That's it.
And dude, there wasn't a dry eye in the place. So part of what I know that God's called me to do is make therapy normal.
Yep.
And get men to understand that. And both of my therapists over the past 3 years have they reiterated this. Ken, what happened to you as a child is not your fault.
Right.
Your trauma is not your fault. But now that you know, it's your responsibility to walk out this healing journey. And dude, Jake, one of my affirmations is I am whole. I choose to use past pain to help others find healing.
That's it.
So it's like what I went through and what you and your wife have went through, you've done the same thing.
Yep.
You've said, man, this pain that I've went through, I'm going to use this pain so other people don't have to go through it the way that I did, or
That's
I can
it.
help them out of it quicker.
That's it. I mean, that being able to engage with your story is that is the journey. Because and a hard part is real modern therapy ends up wanting to make bad guys and good guys. And that's not real work. Real work is about the fact that my mom wasn't bad, my dad was good, or my dad was bad, my mom's good. That this doesn't work. We're dealing with broken people. So I don't need to put things into dualistic mindsets in order to make myself feel better. I need to recognize that some broken people raised me and I got real good stuff and really terrible stuff. And I'm not going to be a victim of that. Although for many people, they may have been victimized, victim still gives them approval as an identity. Victimized puts it and says, I experienced this and now I can wrestle with it. And those two different things, especially as a man, to go, I actually walked through something super hard. Here's what it was. And I don't know how it affected me today. I know that I struggle in some ways, and we call it following the thread in the work that we do. So what we do is we'll get a man to a place where he shares something in his story that's significant, and then we try to help them attach what emotion is it that they're primarily feeling, because men stereotypically don't have a good language for their emotions. They don't have a high vocabulary for it. And so we're just helping them get a vocabulary. I don't think there's not like a right vocabulary, just a vocabulary. I don't care. And then the goal is to go, now that we've identified that, we go, when do you know in your story was the first time you felt that way that you just described? When was the first time you felt that? And let's follow the thread all the way back. And it's like, oh, it's a totally different situation, had nothing to do with what they're experiencing today, but is deeply.
Are you kidding me?
Your entire team is getting hugs from me. I'm coming to Atlanta,
They're
getting
gonna be
hugs.
like, bro. But we were talking about the thread. You were talking about going back to that first moment you remember that emotion, Jake.
Right. And so once a man finds or can name that emotion, the goal of the work that we do is to get them to recognize, if they follow the thread back, that is not the first time they felt that way. Especially in marriage or in business or in relationships, men want to go, oh, I'm having this big emotion and it's about this circumstance. Never, almost never is that accurate. If there's a big emotion attached to a circumstance that's right now, it's usually that big emotion is defending an experience that happened back there that they never looked at. So following the thread is simply asking the question, when was the first time in your life you felt that way? Not right now, but that emotion, whatever name you want to give to it, however you want to describe it. Let's go backwards and find the first time you ever felt that way and unpack it there so we can see how it's impacting you here.
Yeah, I
And
love it.
that is like the root system of the work we do.
My friend says if it's hysterical, it's historical.
That is a great phrase.
If it's
That is a
hysterical,
great
it's
phrase.
historical.
That's
Like if
right.
it's something when you blow up or you get triggered,
That's it.
it is that. Well, dude, tell me a little bit about for you walking through what you guys walked through,
Mhm.
having to from the moment your wife's just unpacking her whole life and the men that have failed and let her down, and you took that in weeks and months of just restorative work and patience and those
Yeah.
kind of things for her to where you are today.
Yeah.
What does that mean to you?
I have this.
I got none of that.
That's okay. As soon as I saw you free, I was like, that's a frozen face.
Yeah.
Um, for me, what I've watched is I watched our pain become purpose in other people's lives. And I feel like that's the gift, right? Like the gift is if I choose to walk through something and then I'm willing to vulnerably share that with others, they can not go through the missteps and the mistakes that I made. They'll have their own, but they'll be able to go further because I was willing to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
And I think that, and both me and my wife are on, I mean, obviously watching that video, that's just who we are.
Yeah.
Like that's what we're trying to offer the world through our life, through our family, through our marriage, and through our platform, is to be able to allow them to see us in a way that gives them permission to share exactly what's happening in their life with real courage, knowing that mercy and grace is actually what's available to them on the other side.
I love it, man. I love it. Best place for people to connect with you, Jake, and find out more about what you guys have got going on.
Everything that we're doing right now is at thisisthefight.com. So thisisthefight.com, you will find we have an entire online platform for men that covers everything from initiation to identity, to sex, to marriage, to leadership, and all of those things covered in courses. It's like basically a monthly fee to be able to get access to like 90 some videos. Plus every week we do something called Man Talk Monday. So Man Talk Monday is live every Monday. And then that's followed up on that topic every single day called Daily Drive. And so that shows straight up to your phone. And then we do live events. Our next one is in November. So we're doing a live event in Dallas for basically about 40 men, and it's just deep work. So we do
dates on that. What are the dates on that in November?
It's right before Thanksgiving. So that weekend before Thanksgiving is when it is. I think it's the 20th. Let me double check, but it is, the 21st through the 24th. So our next fight weekend is in Dallas, November 21st through the 24th. There's only 40 spots. We keep it small and limited because we want to do really, really deep work. Yeah. And so we've done 12 of these now, and that is, you want to hear crazy stories. That's where they come from. And so, and then we have a book that releases August 6th with Baker Publishing, called The Journey to Biblical Masculinity, 12 Paths Every Man Must Take. And so we have that coming out as well. So we're trying to be a resource to men to be able to walk in the fullness of what they were created for.
Well, I can't wait to help you get this word out and this message out, dude.
Thank you.
And it's insane how God's connected us in a week. It's just been
so.
I don't know if it's been a week. It's been nuts. Yeah. Besides the Zoom demons not trying to get us through here.
I'm like, the good Lord, guys.
I know.
I have not experienced that before.
It's crazy, dude. Y'all go follow Jake, the Jake Hamilton, on Instagram. Thisisthefight.com. Listen, if you're a guy, faith-based, not faith-based, you've got to check out what my guy's doing right here. It is, again, if you missed the very beginning of the podcast, we talked about, literally, I saw a video between him and his wife, and it moved me. I posted it. We got connected, and here we are doing a podcast together.
So wild.
Jake, dude, thank you so much for joining us, my friend.
Hey, I appreciate the time. Thank you so much, Ken.
Hey, guys, thanks for joining us on another episode of As the Leader Grows. Listen, we've hit the top 1% of all podcasts in the country. We've done that because of you, our audience, our viewers. Listen, grab this, share this with some men that you know that could use this and it would add value in their life. And we appreciate you, love you. We'll see you next week on As the Leader Grows.